Hi, everybody. Hope everyone is doing great today. Hi, Darrin. Hi, Chad. Hi, Elly.
What's up, Nick?
Hey,
And
hey.
everybody?
Hey,
What's up? Hi,
everybody.
guys.
If you don't mind just letting us know. Oh, thanks, Eric. Hello. How's it going, man? If you don't mind just letting us know if you can hear us okay and see us okay, as well as just mentioning where you're from, that would be awesome.
Fun.
Thanks, Eric. Kansas City in the house.
Oh, cool.
England.
Victoria, BC. Happy Canada Day, Mark.
Apple Valley. I've lived there.
Happy Canada Day as well.
James?
I'm just in Barrie myself. Virginia. Oh, wow. It's so great, just like, in my opinion, like how everyone is from all over the place when we do these webinars.
So cool.
So just a little bit of housekeeping before we begin and start to talk about particles inside of Cinema 4D. The first thing I just want to mention is that there was a Dropbox link provided to everyone that you can access when you were signing up, but for any reason that you don't have access to it, I've already copied the Dropbox link again, and I'm pasting it to the chat. And there are some hands-on exercise files that Darrin Frankovitz has prepared for us to do today when we go through some particles inside of Cinema 4D. And in mentioning that, Elly and Darrin, thank you so much for joining us on our hands-on particle journey. Both
Thanks
of
for
us
having
are.
us.
Yes.
Thanks.
Yes.
Yeah, thanks for asking us. This is cool.
Yeah, happy to be here.
Oh, it's so great. And both Darrin and Elly are Cinema 4D experts, and I've learned so much from you guys over the last little while. So I'm really excited to have you here with me and Chad. And yeah, thanks so much for being here and for sharing your knowledge.
Hey, fun fact. You know that Darrin actually taught me
there it
Cinema
is.
4D. He was my first Cinema 4D teacher. And like I was scared to meet him again because I feel like I've let him down because like I haven't made that much great stuff in Cinema 4D. And he was such a good teacher and gave me such a great foundation, but like that was great. I've always appreciated you, Darrin, because you got me started.
Wow, thanks, man. Like I'm not used to that. Like I don't know how to respond, but that's really sweet. Thank you.
Reunion here.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
It's very cool. When I first found that out, I was like, that was like the coolest thing I heard like all year. Yeah.
Awesome.
It's like I just love it. It's like such a great reunion here. And I'm sharing my screen. Hopefully everyone can see it. You should know that besides this hands-on particle series, there are a ton of events going on at Maxon. There's the weekly show with Hashi and Seth, VFX and Chill. You should check out the live stream. Elly, are you guys still doing the hands-on Cinema 4D? Is it the last week next week?
Yeah, we're week 6. Yeah, I can't believe it. It's gone so quickly. Like, I don't know if you guys feel the same because we're kind of on the same week path. Yeah, no. So we're doing all things rendering. So we're looking at, native Cinema 4D as well as Redshift. But yeah, I'm gonna be gutted when it's over.
That's awesome.
So that's July 7th. That's awesome. And then you can also check out all of the other demystifying series. There's a color correction one starting next month too, which should be pretty great.
Big
especially
deal.
with the new ASIS discussions I've been hearing about.
Mm.
Very, very cool.
Yeah.
And with all of those Maxon events, I just wanted to mention, last week was a pretty big week in terms of some releases at Maxon in terms of Universe, if you have the Red Giant Complete suite, or you're going to have access to 3 new effects and about 200 new plugins. And then Cinema 4D had an update as well, right, to S24?
Yep.
Yep.
It did a lot of fixes and improvements in the workflow. So yeah, definitely download it.
Sweet.
Yes, so totally check it out. And then we are recording this session. So for any reason that you need to go back and check something out, we are placing this on YouTube, but it's on an unlisted channel called Hands On with Maxon. So I will provide the link to this channel. I'll actually just paste it really shortly here in the question Q&A pod. and check it out. It should be up by tomorrow in terms of this session where we're going to be looking at some Cinema 4D particles. Cool. So that was my little housekeeping spiel. Let me stop showing my screen. So I have to ask, what is Darrin and Elly, what are we doing today?
Wow.
I'll let Darrin explain. He's the mastermind today.
Yeah, I am. I've been, what's the expression? Burdened with great power and privilege. So today I'm going to show you guys the old school, the legacy, the classic, regular old-fashioned emitter in Cinema 4D. And what we can, some of the things we can do with it. And I think you guys are going to learn a lot about just that one like emitter object, which sets everyone up for even more success next week. Where Elly, what's the topic next week?
What am I doing next week? Particles and X particles is So yeah, this is a nice kind of like week before starting off point, I think, for sure.
Yeah.
So I had a question for both Darrin and Elly, because you guys have been working in cinema for so long. So when did you first start to learn Trapcode Suite, Trapcode Particular?
Shall I go, or Darrin, do you want to
go? You guys can pick. I'm
Elly,
totally
you go. Elly first.
Okay, so I had never really kind of like messed with After Effects too much before like we all merged. And then since we did, I was like, you know what, I'm going to check out, like Simon, like in particular, was like, check out like Particular. And and I was like messing with a lot of like the particle stuff in there. But it's really funny, like coming from someone who uses Cinema 4D and X particles, I naturally am trying to do the things that I know how to do in there. And I don't know whether it's just because like learning something new, you tend to stick with the stuff that you know, and because I was learning something totally different. But yeah, I was checking out like some of Nick's like tutorials and stuff, and I know you did some like internal stuff for us. But yeah, it was like really interesting to see like a different way of working. And like for me, I found using like what I love most is like the presets. And so having like not a lot of information or knowledge about After Effects or the Red Giant tools, it was really nice to kind of just break down the presets, and kind of I learned a lot of how to use the tools and kind of like how the different like blocks worked in the designer purely by just kind of like switching things on and off on the presets. So yeah, that definitely was my learning curve.
Very cool.
That's pretty much the same thing for me. I had heard so much about Red Giant products, but Trapcode Particular in particular. And so I had actually checked out a demo of it like some year or two, whatever, before the merger. But it didn't really stick. And then the merger happened, and I've been checking it out. And Nick, as you know, I've shared some files with you that I've been sort of getting into it and trying to recreate or just create some of the particle effects that I wanted to always do in Cinema 4D, but I didn't, because I didn't want to concern myself with thinking particles, and I didn't have X particles, and I just wasn't, there's only so much we can do with this standard legacy emitter in Cinema 4D, as we'll discover.
Yeah,
but it's been cool.
I just find it so fascinating, because you guys are coming from the Cinema 4D background, and then learning a bit about After Effects and the capabilities of what the Trapcode Suite has to offer, and then just bridging that question. Then there's Chad and I'm going to throw this question to you, Chad, where you're looking at things from an After Effects perspective, and from learning Particular, knowing Particular for so long, not to mention, at one point writing the Trapcode form manual, which is quite a lot of knowledge in that head of yours. And I am so curious, like, how would you compare Trapcode Suite to what you know of the Cinema 4D emitter? So what do you find are similar in the way that particles think across the two applications? And what is different from what you know?
That's a great question. At listening to Darrin and Elly talk, it's really interesting. I think it's like I kind of feeling like it's like a mentality difference. Like I initially started like with Photoshop like 21 years ago, and in Photoshop, you don't really have to make an ocean or a fire. Like you can take like a paint stroke and like smudge it and then color it, and like as long as it looks like fire in the end, it's fine. But then once you start getting into After Effects, it's not enough just to look like fire, because then you have to animate it. That's to move like fire. So you can't get away with just kind of like these kind of like fakery tricks, like the Bob Ross, like take this brush and like poke it on the canvas, and then it looks like a cloud or it looks like a tree if you just poke it like this. Like you can't get away with that in After Effects because of the extra, the motion and stuff like that. And I think 3D, it's like another step beyond that, where it really has to be what it is. And so in After Effects, I'm used to kind of like faking 3D and that kind of like compositing trickery that we're used to. Like that's my background. So like it is my tendency, like I feel at home with the Trapcode tools because I can deal with that fakery. But I feel like Elly and Darrin, like their background is to actually make the thing and not simulate a thing. And so I would imagine that like the Red Giant world might be difficult because you're used to just making the whole thing from scratch in 3D and having it actually exist. And so that doesn't answer your question totally, I realize, but that's kind of like how I picture it, as like I'm learning like 3D. There are times where there are limitations, and I'm trying to like get more into 3D particles so that I could have more control and also have them more integrated into my scene. But for me, a lot of the things I want to do with particles are like really sexy, and the render time is so slow that it's just easier to put them on with like form or particular at the end of the thing, because then I have more like flexibility to kind of like play, because
Yep.
in 3D it just bogs down things so much.
Yeah, and I agree with that. And like to add just to my experience, because I kind of started learning with particular first, and then I went over to cinema. The one learning curve, or big learning curve just in general with 3D, was like you don't get a visual experience through your render right away. So it's like you get this emitter, that doesn't matter X particles or your emitter in general, but nothing renders until you feed it geometry of some type, whether it be a child or through some other method. So that was a huge learning curve. I think the other thing is when you look at the Cinema 4D emitter first, it's pretty bare bones in terms of what you do with it. Whether the base emitter or like thinking particles, you get this sort of very basic setup, which has only a certain amount of properties. And then you look at like Trapcode, and it's the opposite. It's like you have 1,000 properties like right in front of you. And that always, like for a while, that only used to be in the effect controls. And then I don't know if it's 3 or 4 years ago when they introduced the designer, that experience became like so much more visual, not to mention easier to find each of the components that made up a particular system. But with cinema, that's deceiving, because when you get the emitter, it's like all you have to do is you have to add things to it in order to have a simulation. So you're using other components, or if we were to draw the parallel of particulars made of blocks, right, that do certain functions or features, they all come attached to the base system. And then in Cinema 4D, you have an emitter, but you have to add the blocks. You have to go to the menus and then add the blocks to have some sort of reaction.
That's a great analogy.
I was going to say that was a really good way of like, like comparing the two.
Oh, thanks, guys. And I think X particles used to be this way too, Elly. Like, I mean, from what I've studied of it, where at least you had to, like, now they give you pretty much a pre-setup is what you usually want to set up, like that has all of these sections where you then start to add the blocks. But before it was just like, oh, you have to add this base emitter and then 300 other things in order to get your simulation. So that's at least how I kind of compare in my head. And I'm curious, like now back to to Elly and Darrin, what would you guys add something to that, like through the experiences?
I like I totally get what you're saying, but the way I see it is that all of these products are essentially an emitter and then effects, right? And where that emitter is located and where the effects are located vary by product, right? And by like, the interface, like how they're arranged vertically or horizontally, right? Because the blocks are horizontal, and in the objects manager in Cinema 4D is vertical. So I sort of see the objects manager like blocks, but the block can be anything, because I'm very Cinema 4D like focused, so I see everything in the Cinema 4D frame. But that's what's so cool about the about Trapcode in particular, is that you have such a great starting point. Everything is there when you open it up, with that designer, and you don't have to build it individually like we do here. Yeah, should I share my screen?
Yeah, we should. I think that's, you were just like reading my mind there, Darrin. I'm just like,
yeah, it's a great transition.
We have like 40 people here who are just like, I signed up for a hands-on class and these guys are just talking about particles. Show us some stuff.
Yeah.
So yeah, no, I would love, yes, very much. Let me see if I can hand that off to you.
And while you're doing that, I did totally just sort of cut off Elly's ability to respond to that.
No, to be honest, I wish I knew more about particular to have more of an opinion on this. Like I know like X particles relatively well. I know Cinema 4D, Emitter, and thinking particles like very well, and so that's where kind of like my knowledge is. And so my comparison, isn't as great as you guys, but particular was really like fun and interesting to mess with. But there were a couple of things. I don't know if in like the newest version you can do them now, but there were little things that I was like messaging Simon and being like, oh, can you do this? Can you do this? I can do this in X particles. And it was like having like particles die and things like that. So yeah, I just try and do the same thing just to see how it works, just so I can learn it a bit better. Yeah, I definitely need to get more into it. I'll watch some of the previous sessions.
I actually watched your Nick and Chad's previous hands-on particle stuff, and it was really cool. There's a lot of cool projects in there.
Oh, thanks, man.
Yeah,
oh, thanks, man.
Yeah, you guys have been cranking the stuff out, which is really awesome. So the emitter, all right? So I got some files for you guys. If you downloaded them yesterday or earlier today, then I suggest going back, and because there were a couple files I updated, but I'm going to start with bare bones here. So let's just see, where is this emitter and what do we get with it? So it's actually in the simulate menu in Cinema 4D. I'm in 24.111. But under the simulate menu, we have just all sorts of stuff, but we have particles, and this is what we're interested in today. And then there's a couple select thinking particle objects, which we're not concerned with. So I'm gonna go ahead and drop in this emitter. This is the original Cinema 4D emitter from like whatever, 20 years ago. So we get this emitter object in the objects manager, and we can see the shape here. This is the size. This represents the size of the source of the emission, the emitter. So I'll go ahead and press play, and we can see some particles coming out. How's the refresh on your end? Is that jumping around a lot, or?
Looks pretty good, actually.
Yeah,
that's good. Actually, yeah. There's.
All right, cool. So this, when we select the emitter and check out its settings, the size of the emitter is here in the emitter tab, okay? But everything about like how many particles and how fast they move and all that's in the particle tab. So let me actually increase the length of this scene. So if you're following along, make sure that you have a new scene. You've gone simulate particles and chosen that emitter. Now let's increase the length of this scene so that the particles don't start over every 90 frames. So I'm going to go down here to this number, and I'm going to just go 333 and hit enter. So now instead of this being 91 frames long, it's 334 frames long. So great. Now, because it's still playing, I can see at a certain point the particles stop. Now, looking at the emitter's particle properties here, there is a start emission and a stop emission. And this is 330 frames. So let's just set the stop emission to 300. Okay, now every particle that's born is going to, has a life. This is just sort of a standard thing, whatever particle system you're using. Here it is 600 frames by default. I'm gonna leave it just as it is, but we also have this distinction between how many particles we see here versus how many particles are rendered. And those are the first two settings in this particle tab, right? So it's 10 for the editor view. That's just this view. And then if I render this view, well, we'll see nothing because, and I did click render. Oh, but you know what? I actually have my default scene set to redshift. Let's go standard.
Hey, Darrin.
Okay. Yeah, go ahead.
Am I allowed to interrupt and ask you questions?
Yes. I don't have to answer
Okay.
them.
Okay. Okay. You don't have to answer this. But, so
Please
the birth rate editor and renderer, that refers to like the particles per second?
That is a really good question. And I think it is in fact particles per second, because if I go forward one frame, I don't think I see 10 particles. I see one.
Okay. Okay.
If I go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Oh, well, I'll just go. Well, unfortunately, because of the nature of the beast, I have to go forward frame by frame to get to 30. And now if I count these, then I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 10. Yeah, so it is per second. Yep. Awesome question. Thank you.
Thanks, man.
So that's in the editor. I got 10, and I'll say like 100 here. But the thing is, these particles, it's just data. What we want to do with it in Cinema 4D, what we choose to do with that data, that can go just so many different directions. But let's say we just want to see something, right? If I, click render again, we see nothing. So I need something on that emitter. One option is to put a model in its place. So I'm going to go to the asset browser real quick, and let's clear out this previous search. And let's go to objects. And how about oh, you know what? I think there's dice. Yeah, there we go. So I'm going to get this one because it'll render faster without the refraction. I'm going to add that to my scene because it's the first time I used it, it downloaded it. So now I have this die in here, and if I hit O on my keyboard, there it is, and I zoom out, I can see how big it is. So it's relatively small, but to actually have that as a particle, that model, I got to take that and make it a child of the emitter object. And even that is not yet enough, right? So it's a child, but I still can't see it. That is because this show objects option in the emitter's particle properties is not on. So if you're following along, make sure that you go to your asset browser, this icon up here, search with the word dice, and then you'll see die or whatever you want to add, and then just drag it in, make it a child of your emitter, okay, and then check show objects. And Darrin,
I just had two questions for you.
Yeah.
One was like when you usually work with particles and you're like building a simulation, will you try to get away with just the emitter without actually rendering geometry as long as you can, or are you someone who just you need that visual experience right away? I'm just curious, your thought process when you do these particle simulations in Cinema 4D.
So I want things to be, the first thing with particles that I'm focused on in Cinema 4D is where are they coming from, how many are there, and do they have the right behavior, right?
Okay.
Does it, like right now, like if I wanted these to like fall, like this is certainly not the right behavior because they're just going straight out, right? So I'm more, and in order to be able to get to that correct behavior, I need what's going on in front of me in Cinema 4D to be as quick as possible. So I would not at this point show the objects, right? This is much faster. And
Can I ask a follow-up question about that? Does it slow things down to I'm assuming it slows things down to show the objects, but does it also slow things down just to make the particle a child of the emitter?
Like as it is right now, is it slowing it down?
Yeah.
No.
Okay.
Yeah, it's essentially like if I were to turn off the emitter, right? I've disabled all of the emitter's properties by clicking on that check mark. And yeah, the playback is faster. But like it's still there. It's the same thing with that show objects checkbox. When it's on, then like there's all that calculation. Now but that just because you put something in there and you're seeing it doesn't mean it's going to dramatically slow it down. This is currently, if I right click and say object information, has 490 points per die. Now, if I set the subdivision editor to 0, this is actually much faster because let's stop here and zoom in, and then I'm going to show the display lines, Garot shading lines. So this is like the original mesh, but with the renderer level of detail, it looks like that. And let's see. So at this point, there's 490 points. And at this point, there is 490. Okay, so let's do it like this. I'm gonna right click and say current state to object. So the higher level of detail has, in fact, where to go? Object information. There you are. 810 points. Okay, and the original object has, I think we've already discovered
400 something.
Yeah, 490. So it's like, twice as many points that need to be drawn on every particle and calculated with lighting and materials and all that stuff. So yeah, so it depends on what you have in there, and you could even, if you do need to see the shape to get an idea of like how things are sort of falling into the scene, you can use a proxy object, something that just sort of fills in the place visually and approximates its size. So like if I make this cube a child of that main shape, and then it's all zeroed out. So then I'll come out here. Let's go to the die. That cube is way too big, so I'll go ahead and scale it down. But I can actually see right here that the size plus of the die 2 is 1.6. So I'll go to this cube and I'll make it 1.6, 1.6, 1.6. And then now I have this cube that I can use like temporarily in place of the die, and that'll be even faster in my screen. So you have a lot of options, and like I said earlier, like what you choose to do with this data, with this particle data, you know, you can go anywhere. So like I said earlier, like let's say I just want this to sort of like fall and bounce off a floor. You know, like right now that's not happening. Let me make this a little bigger so we can see it here. And also I'm gonna go Shift R. I'm gonna render this to my picture viewer because, and I know I've done a number of things that if you're following along, like you probably just got totally lost. And my apologies for that. Don't worry about this. What I'm doing right now is I want to just simply show you the difference between so you have that visual confirmation, editor versus renderer particle count, right? So I'm at, I'm gonna wait till I get to frame 30, just a couple more seconds. But let's go here to frame 30 so we can see, boom, boom. All right, so there are the 10 particles in the editor view. And if we go back to the renderer, picture viewer, then here we are at frame 30 in the renderer. So let me actually put these side by, so you can see this is much more dense, right? So there's another level of control that you have to get a more speedy feedback in your editor view before you render. All right, now let's actually, so I can be in the same place as all of you that are following along, I'm gonna just put that die back in.
Thanks
now,
for that detour, by the way, Darrin. Also, Nick,
Sure.
I totally cut in line and asked to follow up before you asked your second question. I'm sorry.
Oh, what was that second question?
Oh, no worries. So, no, so there was just a question from James, and I'm not sure if you have this. Do you have like a zoom enhancer for your pointer potentially on your system? He was just saying.
Oh, gosh,
If you
I
don't,
didn't change my resolution. No, I don't.
okay, no worries. That was just curious, and I mean, if there's a break where we have a conversation, we can always like go to your other screen resolution, but I wouldn't say switch at the time being for this demo.
I do believe I could go to like find it in the Windows settings, but
yeah, I think we continue right now, and then if we can do it, we do it, and then I think this is a random Redshift question, so I really I hope it doesn't disrupt flow. We can table it and come back to it. But someone just asked if there's a way to create multiple Redshift materials from an XML or JSON file. If it's too much, we can table it to the end because we're on a topic of particles.
No, we'll put a pin on that because we really are focused on just particles today. I have some files I've shared that are like I used Redshift, some I did not, because the focus here isn't so much on what renderer you're using. But yeah, put a pin in that. We'll get back to that.
Perfect.
So
thanks, Darrin.
Sure. Okay, so if you're following along, you have your emitter, you have your object that's in there. Now, let's make sure that thing that is in there, if it's die 2, you go to its subdivision editor, set that to 0. Now, my machine's fast enough that I can set its birth rate editor to 100. So now I will see in my editor view the same thing as in my render view. Now, I need these to fall. Where is my gravity? Well, this emitter works with a special type of object in order to receive gravity, and that object is a force, okay? And that is also located in the simulate menu. We see forces, this forces menu. And these objects, the original objects like, I don't know, tractor, deflector, destructor, friction, gravity, rotation, wind, turbulence, they were originally created just for this particle emitter. Now they work with, any dynamic thing in Cinema 4D. But I'm just gonna add the gravity object to the scene and rewind and press play. So and immediately we're seeing it fall, right? Now this is this gravity object. If we actually take a closer look at it by just moving it over, we can actually see there's a little line sticking out from it. And the direction of that line from its axis is the direction of the gravity. So we could rotate this to point, up and to the left. And actually there is a little arrow on there. Okay, so now gravity is going that way, so, that's a little weird. I'm gonna reset that to 0. I just wanna show you that, you can just rotate that to change the direction like wind, but there is also a wind force. And let me just turn off the gravity and add that wind. I'm just gonna add the wind so that you can sort of see that it has an even bigger icon, which I really appreciate. It has an arrow of the direction of the wind, which I will point down. And you don't have to follow along here. I'm just illustrating something. So now as the wind is going down and gravity is off, but it's as if they're falling. That's just, because of the direction of the wind. So ideally, like this isn't how I would do gravity. I would in fact use the gravity object. And then for wind, I would, maybe animate the direction of this guy. And now that I have the gravity in the wind, it's, I'm jumping a little bit ahead. So let's just delete that. If you are following along, then you have your emitter, your object, that's your particle, and then you have a gravity. And the gravity is all default. There's essentially one setting that you're concerned with right now for the gravity, and that is its acceleration. It's essentially like the strength. Yeah, so if I add a 0 on here, then, I expect that they're going to fall much more than before. Let's stop here and zoom out. So the particle's like right there at frame 55, rewind. Oh wait, did I? I thought I added a 0. There it is. Okay, and then press play. Yeah, there we go. So now it looks like they're sort of pouring out of something, right? So it's a lot faster. So it's not like physically accurate, right? But 250 is a good starting point. You generally don't have to mess with it. But this doesn't really have like mass. These particles don't actually have mass. And so gravity is pretty arbitrary at this point. So yeah, that's, I guess, one of the limitations of this, at least until we add rigid or soft body dynamics, which we'll get there. Now I'm going to add a plane to the scene, and I'd like you to do this as well. Add a plane object to your scene. It's in this menu with the cube. Okay, and then use your move tool to move that plane. You know what? Let's actually leave the plane where it's at. Okay, instead, select your emitter and move it up and over to the left, okay, or leave it, just move it up, all right? And then with your plane, go to its object properties and set its width and height to 1,000 and segments to 1 and 1. Okay, so now the particles are not going to actually hit this plane. We actually need the force called deflector, all right? So we'll go to the simulate menu and we're gonna add that, deflector force. But if you first select the plane and then hold shift when you go simulate forces deflector, then that deflector is gonna be made a child of the plane. And what I want you to see here is that actually, in fact, some of the particles are hitting that deflector and are being bounced off, right? So it's not facing the right way and it's not big enough. So let's see, this plane is 1,000 centimeters. We'll make the deflector also 1,000 centimeters, and then we'll just rotate it. So go to the deflectors coord tab, and which one? I think it's pitch. Yep. Set the rotation.p as in pitch to 90. So now it is in the exact same place and the exact same size as the plane. So we don't necessarily see it, but it is certainly working because I'm seeing the particles hit that and then bounce off. Okay, so again, this is not physically accurate, but I am getting more of the behavior I want.
Hey, Darrin, can I interject something really quick? Because this is a really vital difference for me. Like the bounce stuff in particular is like amazing. You do all these cool things like we've talked about in the last couple of weeks. You can kill particles and do all these cool things, but you are working with planes, you know, in After Effects 3D space, which is really difficult. Like they're just solids, and it's sometimes really difficult to gauge where those are. But this is kind of like the stuff that I was talking about earlier, where it's just like you're seeing the whole world here. So you have like a lot more control over like how things bounce, the size of the area, and exactly what it's doing, which you don't have in After Effects. So this is cool.
Yeah, and you know, let's also remember about the integration with Cineware, the integration. You know, if you know that you have an emitter here or there, then you know there are, you know, we could just output the position of this plane and its size, or yeah, with the let's see, we go to render tags and we add the external compositing tag, and then that's going to, you know, and then I can rename this Trapcode bounce floor. Right now, when I you know, if I brought this into After, I'm not going to now. If I brought it into After Effects and then extracted 3D data, then I would get, because of this tag, I would get a, you know, I'd get that 3D layer with some arbitrary size, but it would be like, it would save that position 3D space so that I could add the deflector in After Effects the same place that it is here. Anyway.
Cool. Oh,
Love it. Thank you.
I had actually just something to add to what you said, Chad, because it totally reminds me of the exact same thing about how visual this experience is. And I don't know if you'd agree, Chad, but when you go through the blocks in the designer of particular, the only visual like user interface tip when it comes to forces comes in fluids with like basically an area that looks like an effector where you can see how that area is affecting your particles and affecting their buoyancy. But then when it comes to the environment block and you're adjusting like properties like wind, those properties, you can't actually see like the actual wind and how that force is affecting your particles. Versus Darrin, you were just actually showing.
That's a great point.
When you added wind, you get this visual UI element of a wind wheel.
Little fan.
And you can move it around. You can rotate it in the viewport. And that's how you can control your particle simulations, which to me is that's exactly what I want to do sometimes, is just grab onto those elements to control that experience. Very cool.
Yes. We need to get that. We need to like unionize and get them to put that fan in the designer.
Feature request I see coming after this session.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, in some places in particular, you know, it's a very thoughtful element that's added as it has happened here. So, yeah, you know, another difference is that there are some parameters that you can change in the designer and see the result immediately without even rendering. I mean, here, if I really want to see the result, here, let's get rid of this. Let's press play. Let's go about here. You know, if I really want to see what this looks like in the end, I have to render my view. And, you know, now I'm concerned with lighting and materials and, you know, all that stuff. In After Effects, you know, you don't have to worry as much about it. Yeah, it's still an issue. You need things to, look good and match up and everything, but yeah, I guess it depends on the goals. Speaking of goals, I feel like I've spent enough time on this guy. Where did I put my phone so that I know where we're at on the clock? Okay, so am I correct? We're about 45 minutes in?
Correct.
Okay, cool. So I'm gonna, let's see. So let me do a couple of other things with this. It's gonna go a little fast, but feel free to follow along. At this point, you have the emitter. It's emitting the dye. You have gravity. You have a floor with a deflector. One of the limitations is, if I, like, this is dice. So what if there was actually sort of like, oh God, what's that game? Was it like roulette or something?
Yeah, that was going to be my guess.
Yeah, like with the little balls and the black and white and the numbers. Like if I wanted this particle to bounce off of a part of this, right, like this edge, that's not going to happen unless I take a deflector, size it to just that little bit there and put it right there, and then take, another one and put it right there and right there. And that's just a lot of manual setup and takes a lot of time. Nobody wants to do that. It is an option, but I don't want to do that. So, there are other ways that we can create the effect of like a physical bounce. And that way that I'm going to show you in a moment is actually by using this thing called the field force. All right, so we'll get there, but for now, with just this basic floor deflector gravity emitter, I do want to show you wind and turbulence again. So I'm going to go ahead and turn off the gravity. So just disable your gravity and disable deflector and floor. So you just have your particles. Now, in your emitter particle properties, let's go ahead and increase the speed by adding a 0. So we're at 1500. Now because they're moving faster, they're more spread out. So, I'm going to increase the number of particles here. I'm going to double it to 200, editor and renderer. And, that's a little bit better. Anyway, the geometry is so small. It's hard to see. Now, if I turn off show objects, then I can sort of see that like tick, and the length of that tick or the length of that particle line shows me like how fast it's going visually. Like, so if I stop, I can see where they're at and that they're moving pretty fast. So, and that's fine. Now I'm going to add the, now if you haven't yet, now's a good time for you to add the wind object to the scene. And then with it selected, go to your rotate tool and then rotate that wind. And you may or may not, depending on your angle, see it actually blowing the particles. In this case, I have to get zoomed out pretty far before I start to see them sort of, wandering away from that line in the world grid. I don't know, can you guys even see that line?
Barely. It's very, very subtle, but yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So so in this case, the wind speed isn't great enough to like blow it away. So I need to increase the wind speed. So I'll say like 50, rewind and play. Right. Now we can see it curving more off to the side. Awesome. But it's a very uniform, perfect wind. Okay. And that is why we have this turbulence scale, and turbulence frequency. We don't have to use these, so I'm going to leave them as they are. I am going to put the wind speed to whatever, 20, something lower. I don't need them to go all the way out there. But to speak to this whole turbulence thing, we're actually going to add now to the scene the turbulence force. So go to your simulate menu, forces, and add the turbulence force to the scene. Now this doesn't have, oh, you know, and I don't think I ever actually said out loud that the wind object, the greater the wind speed, the faster you actually see that fan rotating. So yeah, okay. Now I got this turbulence object in here, and if I just sort of come around here, we can already see there are a few particles that are sort of straying off, all right? This turbulence has also a low strength. So if I set that up to whatever, 50, rewind, play, then I'm seeing some of the particles wandering away due to that turbulence much sooner in the stream. Now we have control over this turbulence. We have the scale of it, so how disturbed or homogeneous this is and how fast that turbulence structure sort of moves within itself and thereby affecting the particles. That's the frequency. So like if I have a very, so here, let's try a frequency of like 1, and let's turn off the wind so we get a straight line. And to see this very, very clearly, go to the emitter and set the emitter size in the emitter tab. In the X and Y size, set that to 1 or 0, right? So we have this tiny, tiny stream from which all these particles are emitting, and then we can much more clearly see the effect of that turbulence. All right, so I'm going to set the turbulence scale now from 0 to like 500. All right, and then you can see that we get something much more homogeneous and wave-like, right? And like, you see that sort of, that one curve right there at the start? That right there, do you see that curve?
Yeah, it's gorgeous.
Okay, now check this out. I'm gonna go to the frequency and let's set that to 200, and that curve is gonna be moving noticeably. See that?
Yeah.
So that's frequency of turbulence, okay? And now if I, let's put that back down to what, 1. Now with the scale, we have that more homogeneous when it's a larger scale, and the smaller scale, the more disturbed and turbulent, I guess, this turbulence is. Essentially, every particle has its own different, noise. So this is what values you want here, or you just got to sort of fiddle with it and find what find the result you're looking for. One thing, however, is that all of these objects are sort of, they're being applied to every particle that exists in this scene, no matter where that particle is in this scene. Like if it's too far away, maybe it shouldn't have so much turbulence, and to limit the effect of the turbulence, we have a fall off tab. And
hey, Darrin, can I ask you a quick question about the emitter from the chat? Mark had a great question about like if you wanted to create like a debris field where there's like multiple objects in the emitter, like would you need to create multiple emitters, or can you add multiple objects to the same emitter?
Yeah, so
okay. Kind of like a cloner, I guess.
Yeah.
Okay.
In fact, if I was doing a debris field, I would not use the emitter. I would use the let me just to show you. I would use MoGraph. I would use the cloner.
Interesting. Now, do you find yourself like using like particles and like MoGraph stuff kind of like interchangeably, or do you gravitate more towards one or the other?
MoGraph, definitely MoGraph.
Interesting.
Yeah. I don't use this. I don't really use this emitter, except for when someone, you know, in the, you know, in the training that we do at Maxon for, you know, the teams training that we do. You know, if someone asks for a specific result and they want to use particles, but they don't, you know, they don't have a X particles and they, you know, whatever, then, you know, we'll use this. But very quickly they find that they can only really start to use particles the way they want to this way before they have to move on to thinking particles or X particles, right? Or particular, right? So, yeah, but hopefully you can, did I answer the question?
Yeah, no, it's fantastic. And also like seeing that work with like a cloner is really cool, and seeing those forces work that way is
Yeah, I don't even have a cloner in here. So this.
Oh yeah. Okay, sorry, never mind.
Yeah,
But
so, but it does work.
Cool to see it with those different objects though.
Yeah.
And I didn't mean to interrupt you. I just wanted, before you get into fields, I just like, so I can apply this to my head and then imagine multiple objects working with the fields. But yes, so sorry, proceed.
Okay, no, it's all good. All right, so yeah, there's the multiple objects. I am going to do a thing. I want to point out some of the other forces that are of value, because I have heard, you know, you don't always want a particle to last forever. At some point, you want a particle to disappear and not, you don't want to have to worry about it. And so there is a force here, the Destructor, and that will actually kill a particle that falls within it. Now, don't follow along, just showing you this so you can see it. This comes in as this tiny little cube here. Okay, so its settings, I can go to its size or use the scale tool, and I can scale it up so it's sort of blocking the stream of particles here. I'll rewind and let's turn, I'm going to turn that off. So when the particles are going through it, they're killed. Okay, when they reach this volume, they're killed. And this Destructor does not have a fall off. So we cannot use something like a mesh as a Destructor, but Turbulence has fall off. So we can actually limit where the turbulence is applied with another object. So if I actually want this stream to come out more before it starts to break up, then in the turbulence fall off tab, I'm going to add a linear field. Why not? And move it over, and it's actually pointing the wrong way. I can tell because there's a little arrow that's pointing that way. So I'm actually going to rotate this or change its direction to, let's try positive Z. So now after the particles pass this, then they're being affected by that turbulence. I can make this more obvious by increasing the strength of the turbulence. And now it's like I'm almost getting something that's more fluid-like in its disruption. But it's only happening where that little linear field is. So if I move it closer, right, and we can animate the position of this to sort of bring in a turbulent wind and then bring it out, right? Or then it comes back in, you know? So I'm like designing this in a way. Okay, anyway, so just a quick look at how a field can work with some of these particle forces. But what I'd like you to do now is actually open up a file. I want to show you something fun and fast. So go to your downloads and open up Start, legacy emitter serial start. Cancel. And I actually have it open, so start. Okay, and you'll see this. All right, actually everything is here except for the emitter. So open up the scene. Now what we're going to do is we're going to have this box pour out LOKI serial pieces. Okay, so we need an emitter. So let's actually add an emitter to the scene. We'll go forces. Oh yeah, sorry, particles under the simulate menu, particles, and then emitter. And it's too big. So let's set that emitter size down. Now we can do it numerically, but what I haven't done is scaled it down. Oops, that's a rotate tool. There's the scale tool. So I'm just going to click and drag in my view so I can interactively scale that. And then I can go to my move tool and move that up and sort of into, I'm just putting the axis in the box, and then I can see, cool, it's still too big. So I can go back to scale and continue scaling it down. And I'm just going to put it like right at the front. You know, no one's going to see if this box is full or not. It's not a plastic bag after all. So I definitely want them to come though from the bottom. Now, I want the particles to come out. I need many more of them. So in the particles, in the emitters particle tab, let's go ahead and increase the birth rate editor to, why not, 200. And we need to see these pieces. So I'm going to go ahead and select the LOKI objects and make them a child of the emitter, and then turn on show objects. So now they're all coming out. And what I want to show you now is how can you apply physically based dynamics to this, to these particles. And we're going to do that using the rigid body tag. So I'm going to rewind. Because there's so much geometry now, I'm going to set the birth rate editor to 50. I'm going to rewind and play, and that's faster. Now, what I'm going to do is on the emitter, and I want you to follow along here, right click on that emitter. If you don't have a right click, then simply select the emitter and then go to the tags menu, or right click, and then find the simulation tags and choose rigid body. Now, much like in a particle emitter itself, we do need to rewind to frame 0 and then play forward to see the results of this dynamic simulation. And what we can see is that they're all just sort of falling through everything. So we need colliders. So we will make the bowl and the floor and the box all colliders by selecting the soup/cereal bowl and the disc and the, you know what, just those two, the soup and the disc. Just select those and then add, right click, simulation tags, collider body. Okay, so we are specifying this is not like dynamic, it's not falling, right? It's just a collider, okay? And now I can see those pieces are falling into the bowl. They are sort of going through that little flap. So what I will do is now on the box, add that collider tag as well. Boop. Rewind and play. There we go. Okay, so if you're following along with that, and it was, I know I moved pretty quickly, then you should have something similar to what I have. Your angle will be different, you know, maybe you're looking at it from a different place. Maybe your emitter is deeper inside the box and you don't, you know, whatever. Yeah, so this is how we can apply like real physical dynamics to the legacy emitter. And also we have gravity that comes with that. Okay, we don't have like wind, but we can certainly add that to it but we're not going there right now.
So Darrin,
yeah.
just to like recap, if I understand, you're going to put a rigid body tag on the emitter and collider body tags on the collision objects.
Yeah, like anything that you want the particle to hit and bounce off of will receive a collision tag.
Okay, and it's just a regular rigid body tag on the emitter itself.
That's correct.
Okay.
Yep.
Side question: would that work on like a cloner as well? Would you put a rigid body tag on the cloner? Is that how you would do that, or is it a different workflow?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Alternatively, you might be able to get away with doing this. Watch, taking that rigid body tag, and then let's instead put it on all of the individual objects that are within the emitter. Right? That is working as well. Just as it would.
Because then you could have some particles that didn't collide. Like if you want to have like milk splashing or something else falling on the ground or going somewhere else or something like that, then
yeah,
that's cool.
Yeah,
awesome.
But I don't like this way because now I have 4 tags with all of those tags settings that I have to concern myself with. You know, you can do it the same way in MoGraph. All right. So if you're working with a cloner instead of an emitter, you can apply dynamics this way or that way. I like the simple way where it's just on the parent, and then I can go to the collision tab and I can say that everything that is inside of this parent will not only receive this tag virtually, that's default, but it will also every individual element. You know, we'll get that tag. Alternatively, I could say this whole chunk is its own single collision shape. I'm not going to do that. That's crazy for this scene. Anyway, so that's that. I just wanted to show you that real quick. The next thing that I wanted to show you, and I'm definitely not going to have time to go through everything, is this robot. So this robot, Elly and Matt modeled and textured in their hands-on Cinema 4D sessions, you know, the same time that you guys have been doing the particles one. And so I thought that I'd bring it in here and, you know, make some start at creating some like smoke or fire coming out of it, right? And you know what you'll discover is that there are better tools for this type of thing, but let's actually open up that file. So we're going to open up week 01 primitive robot Redshift. If you don't have Redshift, that's okay, because we're not really concerned with materials or lighting. That's all taken care of. But let me go ahead and go to that scene, and here I have the final result. So I'm actually going to press play here so you can sort of see those particles. Okay, so I want to get this type of motion. So what I want you to do to follow along is when you open this up, you will see bloop, bloop. Oh, you know what? Let's just go revert to saved. Yes. You'll see this when you open it up. You don't have anything. So the first thing we need to do is we need to add the emitter. So we'll go simulate particles emitter, we'll drop it in, and then we need to place it in the right spot. Here's what we'll do. We'll make it, the emitter, a child of one of these lights, which are at the feet. And then in that emitter's coord tab, just put a 0 in the position and a 0 in the rotation values. And then it will be centered on that light, which is where it needs to be. Now its size is too big, so I'll go ahead and scale it down like so. And I'm gonna press play. And oh, there's still a turbulence in here. There shouldn't be. That's very strange. Okay, so let me go here and say click, click. Okay, so sorry everybody, I made a mistake here. So what you should do when you open this up is in Cinema 4D, in the standard layout, you will click on this little layers tab over here. And then you see this final thing. This is actually the end result. So if you want to examine that end result, then you just turn on all of these, check all of these icons except for the lock and that little solo. Okay, and then you'll see, you know, the end result. Okay, now what I want you to do is actually just turn on the M for manager so you can see the objects, and then disable wind and turbulence. It's, I don't know, that should probably happen anyway. But then you can, again, turn off that layer M icon. So now I'm seeing just the particles coming straight out, and they're too slow. So I'm going to go and in the attributes particle tab, increase the speed. I'm going to add a couple zeros in there. That's probably too much, just 1 0. Let's say 500. Okay, 500 is good. And then I'm going to go 100 particles. And I actually don't want these to be such a solid stream. I want them to sort of spread out. And to do that, we actually go to the emitter tab where we have this angle, horizontal or vertical. So if I increase the vertical angle, then it's like fanning out a paper fan. You know, you're spreading those particles out on that one axis. And then we have vertical, which we can increase and spread it out on the other axis, right? So that's definitely too much. I'm going to turn those values down, whatever, like 20 degrees for both of them. So just enough that they're, you know, maybe that's even too much. Let's try 5 and 5. So they're just sort of starting to spread out. The farther away the particles go, the more obvious that'll be. But anyway, let's go ahead and add now the force wind. And I am going to set the rotation of this wind like, I don't know, I just don't want it to be pointing in the same direction that it's already going. And I think here I will add some turbulence. So I'm going to go to the wind speed and double that. I'm going to set the turbulence within the wind itself to 200%, and the scale of that turbulence to 170, excuse me, and then 1,000 for the frequency, right? So basically, the point here is that, you know, you're just sort of entering these values so that you can see that, you know, they're greater than the slider, and you know that's unclamped, so you can go beyond 100%. And I'm starting to get this motion. They are living for too long, so I'm going to set the life time of these to something more like, let's see what 30 looks like. Yeah, that's actually, I don't hate that. I'm just sort of getting like this exhaust. I could make it a little longer by increasing that lifetime, 35, or doubling it to 60, and that's probably too much. But I'm also going to add variation to all of this. So some particles will die sooner than others, and I think that makes sense for smoke. So I'm going to add whatever 25% variation to the lifetime, the speed variation 5%. I'm going to leave the rotation as is, but I want these to actually get bigger. Now, if I render this, oh, I got to go to my other layout here. So if you do have Redshift, you can do the start IPR thing. And let's pause that playback. Now there's depth of field here. So let's actually turn that off by, in the render settings, you open on this icon, then disable Redshift post effects temporarily. Okay, so I don't actually see any of these particles, so I need something on here. In Redshift, what we can do is use a tag, but if you don't have Redshift, you can just add a sphere, put it into the emitter, turn on show objects, and yeah, it's not playing. And then you'll see that sphere. Now, this is too large, so I'm going to set it to like, I don't know, 1. Is that going to be? Let's check 5. Okay, we'll say 5, right? Now, in the emitter, I want them at the end to be much greater. So I'm going to set the end scale to, let's say, 50. So, you know, as you've already learned from Chad Nick, every particle is born, lives, and then dies, okay? And during its life, this end scale says you're going to just continue to grow until you get to be 50 times, or whatever number you put there, the scale that you were born at. And you can add some variation here as well. So whatever, 25%. And let's see, I got the wind in here. So let's increase the speed because they're all pretty close together. So I'm going to go to speed and say whatever, 750, rewind and play. And Redshift is still sort of rendering, so let's actually stop the IPR so we can sort of see that. And now we're getting like, imagine each one sphere is like, you know, a puff of smoke, right? To actually make that look like a puff of smoke, what you need to do for Redshift is, instead of using that sphere, we're going to go to the emitter and add the Redshift tag object, Redshift object tag, and then it has this particles tab. And I'm going to set its mode to, let's try optimized spheres. And then put, you know, and then I actually have something that will render. It's not exactly like geometry like that sphere was. Oh, I clicked on the wrong thing. Yeah, is this set to Redshift? Yeah, but it needs, I don't know, it needs something else, maybe like a material. And I think I'm going to, I already have a material for you. Let me just confirm the name of that material. Boop. The name of that material is RS particle. Excellent. So it is in fact this last material on the list. Let's apply it to the emitter. And then in Redshift, the particle will receive that material with its noise and the transparency. You can inspect that at a later time. Now we just need to put that on the other leg, and we can do that simply by duplicating the emitter. Let's turn off. I'm not used to the standard layout. So I'm just going to zoom in here so I can see that emitter on that 1 foot. And then I'm just going to select it, and then by holding Control or Command, click and drag over like so on that 1 axis handle. So now I have these 2 emitters. I'll rewind and press play. And there we go. They're both streaming out. I'm going to make the second emitter a child of the other light. And cool. So that's like, you know, another pretty simple effect. Now, there is a newer way to affect particles, and that is a new type of force called the field force. And this is like a whole other level. Imagine if you wanted to create your own type of force, like gravity or attractor or whatever. Field force allows you to do that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add, we're going to switch scenes here. All right. So now we're going to the balloon scene. Let's see, where is week 5? We're going to open up balloons start. So go ahead and open that up. You'll see,
Darrin,
please.
I actually had a quick question. This is because in you going along the conversation with redshift and particles, and then you're introducing field force. I was curious, both you and Elly, to chime in on this. Do you find yourself now with those integrations of field force and what's possible with redshift and that integration, that you're using the standard emitter more because of it, or exploring what's possible more?
No.
Okay.
I'm not.
No. Not.
No.
Okay.
Like it's cool, like the field force. You mean like the field force, like addition?
Yeah, like it just, if it opens up in your minds enough to like use the emitter on a regular basis, or if it's just, it's nice to have those things, but you'd probably go to something else just in your professional work. Out of curiosity.
Yeah, it's definitely a cool addition though. And the fact, you can use it with like thinking particles and like within the volume builder, which is something I'll do next week. So it's definitely like you can create some more interesting results now, and it opens up some more possibilities. But yeah, it's like Darrin was saying earlier, there's a lot of stuff in like MoGraph is very powerful, and you can create some sort of similar or even better results with that.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's definitely like a nice addition though.
Let me say, Nick, that if you're looking for like why, if you're looking for an answer to why or when, then I would say that this that the forces, the field force enhances and adds functionality to this very outdated system, for this specific emitter. And I'm going to sneeze. Okay. I'm not, it went away.
It's going to come back now.
That was amazing.
Ah! No,
that was half sneeze. That was fantastic.
So
Generally, your sound effects overall, Darrin, besides that sneeze just beforehand, a couple of your boops and beeps, fantastic.
I'm loving, the beeps, especially over the robot.
Yes.
Did I actually do that out loud? I don't even.
Great.
Oh, okay.
I do the same.
Okay. All right. Good. I'm in excellent company. Let's see. So, look, here's the deal. If you don't know thinking particles, if you don't have X particles, if you don't have Trapcode, then this field force opens, it's almost like you're getting a new particle system, but it looks like the old one. I mean, that's how much functionality that, it adds. Okay. But if you have particular, or if you have, if you get into thinking particles, or ideally X particles, then, you could use this with it, but there's, also so much just in X particles.
Gotcha.
Yeah. Now, with any of these, if you're curious about what they do, because I'm not doing all of them, you can simply mouse over it and hold Control and press F1, or Command and press F1 on a Mac, and it'll open up the help, and it'll take you right to the introductory page for that specific object. So I can see here's a rotator. And if I look at the left side, I can see, okay, well, there's a friction and field force and deflector and gravity, and so you can like browse this stuff. All right, you don't have to expect to just figure everything out, right? Okay, now what are we doing here? Well, here I want to emit a whole bunch of balloons, like it's this is the first hot air balloon of this year's like hot air balloon festival. And we also, because of how much we love the water and the environment, we want to release hundreds of balloons into the air at the same time. That was sarcasm. We actually don't want to do that, but hey, it's 3D, so we can. So I already have in the scene for you an emitter. It's already in the right position, but we got to set it up. If we, but what's our goal here? Well, there is a render. If you check out the renders folder, you'll see this 100 balloons filtered renderer. And this is, and by using field force, I'm, oops, we're not there. I have like a wind, I have some turbulence, and then I have the balloons actually like hitting, most of them anyway, hitting that hot air balloon and then bouncing off quite dramatically, maybe a bit much, right? But the point here is field force. What is it? How to field force? But let's start by placing the balloon.1 object as a child of the emitter and then turning on show objects. It's already on. Lucky you, most of these settings appear to actually be where they need to be. Yep, they are. Now, when you press play, you're going to notice your view changes. A lot of things disappear. That is because I have in the viewport filter menu up here, geometry only playback enabled. If you want to see the grid and the camera and the emitter when you press play, then simply uncheck in the viewport filter menu, geometry only playback. And now when you press play, it's going to play back and it'll show you everything. So I'm going to leave that as is, and I'm going to add let's see, I think I actually did use turbulence and wind, but then the field force just to get the deflection, because as we've learned, the deflector force does not curve. You can't bend it or anything. It's just a plane. So we're going to do this quickly. We're going to go to forces, and I want you to add let's do the turbulence first. Add the turbulence to object to the scene. And let's set its strength to 10 centimeters. Its scale to, and I'm looking at the notes that I made, 38%, and its frequency at 100. Perfect. That is done. Now, add a wind force, and let's see, let's press play here so we can see the particles. If you can't see the particles, then turn off show objects, and you can see those ticks. All right, now the wind, it's in the scene. Let's go ahead and immediately set its strength. Let's double that strength, and let's rotate it something like, I don't know, 15, 20 on the R.H, and then let's go up. So about, I don't know, 70, or somewhere between 50 and 70. And then I think I did like -10 on that last one. So let's just say 15, 72, and -12. Okay. Now, I'm really not getting the right look here. They're not really taking off like I want them to. So let's, in the winds, set its turbulence to 200, its turbulence scale to 170, and its frequency to 1000. And hopefully this will start working. And it's killing me that it's really not. And this is because the emitter has a special tab named include. This is where you can specify which forces will be included or excluded from this emitter. The default is exclude. So if you simply change that to exclude and then rewind, and then I'll let this play out, then you'll start to see that they're coming out and they're like going up with the turbulence. But if we jump into the camera, then we actually don't have like the right amount here. And also I want them to sort of come from behind the camera. So what we'll do is we'll, in the emitter tab, set the Y size to 0. So it's just like a line, all right? And then we'll increase the X size at least. Let me stop and go to the top view here. And I'm going to increase that X size enough that, let me just move those. There it is. That I can actually see that line in the top view going across the cone of the camera. And if I go, back into 3D view, I can see it's just outside of that cone. So I'm going to be getting all those particles coming out like, like on a sheet or whatever, and then going up. And then we can turn back on the show objects and jump into the camera. And what we'll see is that they're all going out, but they're going to just go through that hot air balloon. And so this is why we need that field force. Let me jump over to the side view here. So you can actually see that they're actually traveling through it. So field force time to actually get the deflection. It's not a real deflection, right? It's a fake. And we're going to start off by adding to the scene the field force. And in the field force, there's so much we can do with this. We're not adding to the velocity or speed here. We are instead changing the direction of the particles, because I'm doing like a bounce. So in the field forces object properties, set the velocity type to change direction. And now it knows, okay, this is what we're doing, how are we going to do it? So we have to add a field. And the field that we're going to add is going to actually be like an object, a model, a geometry, a number of points or polygons, right? And that is actually in the hot air balloon. There's all of this stuff, but I believe it's this first thing, balloon. Yep, it's this first object named balloon. So in the field force, take this balloon object and drag it and down and drop it right into that field force. And now if I go to the emitter, turn off show objects, and let's just get a better angle here and press play. And we have all this pre-roll before we actually get to the particles. This is an unfortunate thing of working with an emitter and also of working with dynamics. But yeah, anyway, so just about there, we need to see what is happening when they actually get to that balloon now. So I'm going to let a couple of them go so I can eventually pause and then change my view and see that it actually looks like some of them are being blocked, but they're not really bouncing off. The direction isn't really changing how I want. If I go to the lines display, something's happening. It's just really not exactly what I want. So I need to tweak this. Let's actually be a little more specific in exactly what about this balloon is being used in the field force. So in the field force object, I choose the object I added, the balloon. And then we have all of these additional tabs now. Blending, we'll leave. Layer, that's the balloon. What mode do we want? Do we want it to use the points of the model, which look like that? Everywhere a line connects with another line is a point. And around each one of those points exists a radius. And if a particle comes within that radius of any of the points, it will change the direction. But then the question is, which way does that direction travel? And there is a way to sort of display this visually. In the display tab of the field force, we have some options. But where is this? What's it look like? Well, if we hide the sky from the editor view, and let's rewind and then focus on the field force, which is in the middle of the scene, then we would see something, but because the balloon is way over here, we see nothing. So what we're going to do is we're going to use the balloon a little differently. I think what we're going to do is we're going to use well, let's do this. Let me take the balloon. You know what? I'm just going to double check the end result, which should done sooner. So I got a solid. That's what I thought, and it's being added. Okay. So we've already added a balloon, and that's already in there. Change direction. Let's turn that off. And again, not used to having this layout. So in your field force, that's weird. I don't remember. Oh, I guess I removed it. I don't remember removing it. Anyway, when you have your balloon in there, you want to set its mode to surface, not points. And the radius, I think, is good, but let's see, the radius I actually used in the end was 80. And then I restricted the effect to the outside of the polygons. The inside and the outside is determined by the normal of the polygon. We'll worry about that another time. The object tab we're not concerned with. The remapping tab, it's a value, but we're most interested in the direction. And we do want this use value and scale 100 and invert direction. That's all fine. But I need a little bit more, like, I need to add to this effect so that when the field force is doing its field forciness, it has a little extra help, okay? Because as you saw earlier, it just wasn't enough. If I, let me reduce the particle account here, and let's move this. I'm just doing this temporarily so you can see it without having to wait as long. So now, yeah, so they're hitting it and they're sort of, some of them bouncing off, but I want there to be a little bit more to that behavior. So I'm going to add a solid. This is just sort of like, a solid color or a absolute amount, right? And I'm going to set the mode of this, its blending mode, to add. So I'm adding a constant like direction to whatever is happening with that balloon, change direction. And we have three numbers here, left to right. They represent the x-axis, the y-axis, and the z-axis. We can also do a -1 so that they go down. But you can see that immediately from the start, they're going straight up. And I don't want that. I want this to be restricted to the balloon. So we can use the balloon as a mask on the solid. So if you right click on that solid, you can say add mask, or you can simply select the solid and then go and click on this little icon to add a mask. And then we'll take, again, this balloon object and drag it in to that mask folder. And now, yeah, only when they hit it, they're pushed up. And because there's just sort of like a limited radius around the surface, they're only pushed up within that radius, and then they just sort of continue going that way because there's really no gravity or physical behavior here. And so that is all good. Let me go ahead and turn back on the emitters show objects so that we can actually see that happening. Now, this is not a perfect solution. The geometry itself does not collide. So if I stop and zoom in, what is actually colliding, and now I'm inside of the balloon, you can see that geometry is peeking through. There is no real collision here. It's just sort of seeing that position of the particle and that position of along the surface, and then it's deflecting it. So this is not physically accurate, but it is, you know, it's a fake like everything else that we do. Yeah, so, and I changed the position of my emitter, so it's all funky. But if I did an okay job with you guys in this project, then you should be able to see the final result, which would look like, I'm turning that hidden layer on because it is in fact the end result that I want to show, which would be like the renderer in the render folder. And where are we on time? Because I haven't been paying attention. What do we got? Like 20 minutes left?
18 minutes. 18 minutes,
Darrin.
So look, I'm speeding through all of these objects. I'm picking and choosing, like, you know, like we're gonna use this here, we're gonna change the setting. It is overwhelming. But the point here is that you're getting into it, you're starting, all right? You have a vehicle here, right, that you can explore things and use the help with. So you don't have to, if you want to learn more about like this wind, it's already here. You can just right click and do show help or choose Control or Command F1. And you can begin exploring the properties or, the help for these objects. You can start fiddling with them and so on. And the more you do that, the more you'll, build up your muscle memory, and you'll sort of know what is good for this and what is not good for that. Because every project you do, every animation that you imagine that you want to create is going to have different difficulties and successes, and that is to be welcome. There is no like, yeah, always use this for that. I mean, yeah, there is some of that, but anyway, I digress. Now I had some other examples, like, so I have another field force example, and I was really hoping that, and it's actually this super, so you have some renders, you definitely have network traffic low filtered in that folder. And this is, I wonder, I think this is, yeah, this is actually standard Cinema 4D, okay? We're gonna skip that and skip that. Hello, next. Okay. Anyway, this is standard Cinema 4D, and let me confirm that you guys do have that. And what I discovered was, although what I wanted to happen, let me go ahead and switch to that file. So if you want to, and we're not actually going to be we're not actually building anything here. I just want to make a couple of points for you about particles and this particle system in Cinema 4D. And again, like next week with the X particles and thinking particle stuff, it's, there's a lot of significant differences. Okay, network traffic clones are better. And that's the point here, is that in some cases, clones are faster and easier to set up and to render and to adjust. So there we go, network traffic clones are better. Let's open that up. There we go. So this is the final result with, well, it's my work in progress, but here, what I have, you can see, is lights traveling along this network of splines, okay? And it's sort of floating above this, this abstract, greebly displaced surface. And some things are glowy and some things are very dark, but the lights have visible noise on them. But it's in a cloner, and I'm cloning that light directly onto the spline. Okay, now if I show you just the spline, I'm just gonna, oops, wrong icon. I'm gonna solo that. All right, so that's the spline from this camera angle. We can come out and stop, rewind. Let's hit O to focus my view on it. So it's sort of like this, dense ridiculousness. I actually created this using Noseman's plugin, which is called Network. This is, he would probably not be very satisfied with my implementation here, because this is basically the very first thing that I did with it. Go ahead.
That's a really expensive plugin, right? If I'm correct, Darrin?
It's really expensive, but the good news is that it's free.
Yeah. Okay. That's why.
So despite that high price point, it is accessible to everybody.
Yeah, entry level. It's pretty cool. I love the fact, like what you can do with the networks and stuff there.
Yeah, and whatever, it's something. But that's how I created this. It's not here. I already converted it to a spline. But I just wanted to show you, like, there's that spline. Now, if I wanted particles to travel along it, well then, we go like, particle emitter, and let's turn off solo here, and let's turn off the cloner and the lights. Let's turn off the ground. So I just have my network spline and my emitter, and where is the emitter? It's way off over there. So let's go ahead and I'm going to move it closer to those splines, and it's super small. But first I'm going to rotate it -90 on the H. So in the emitters coord tab, its r.h value is -90. And then I'm going to make the emitter X size 10,000. Is that going to be? Yeah, that's good. And the Y size, I'll just leave it 100. And I want these, let's increase the number and the birth rate. Press play. And where did it go? It's over. Do I have this? Oh, okay. In the filter view, gosh, I made all sorts of mistakes setting up these files. When you open up this network traffic clones are better file, go to your editor filter menu and enable particle. Why would I even turn that off? The whole point is particle. Oh, because clones are better, right? Okay. Anyway, now when we rewind and play, then we'll see some particles if they're moving fast enough. But remember, this was really small. So we need many more particles and they need to move faster. So let's say 15,000 for the speed and birth rate editor 1,000. And now I'm seeing them come out, but they're just sort of like, what? What's that? What's going on there? Well, if I'm not mistaken, there is in these other layers all this other stuff. So what you can do is, oh, I totally said I wasn't going to go through this step by step, didn't I? I did. I totally did. And you guys were gonna let me
You're
keep
committed
going.
now.
Yeah,
Nope, I'm
you wrote
done.
that check.
I'm done. You know what? I'm whipping that up. I'm burning it. Not doing
Everyone
that.
wants to know now.
Well, and there's a way that you can find out if you go to your layers and you turn on all of this stuff here. Beep, boop, beep, doop, boop, da, boop. Oh my gosh, I just did it. Okay.
Hey, Darrin, I got a couple really great questions for you from the chat.
Yeah.
They're not related to this this thing necessarily, but one of them kind of goes back to the balloons thing and how like the geometry like didn't quite, like the simulation wasn't exact. The deformation, deflection, or whatever. Is it possible to go back to the
Yeah, it is totally possible, and we can do rigid body dynamics with that. So let me actually go back to that. So what I could do is I could say on this balloon, I'm going to right click on it and I'm going to add that rigid body tag. Okay. Now this balloon has its own collision shape, right? And dynamics, which are good and bad. The problem is because of that, now, because of that tag, they're all going to just sort of fall. There may be some field force, no, but they're falling. They're not going up because of the rigid body dynamics, gravity, they're falling. What I want is to, instead, I want them to use the original position of the particle, not the rigid body dynamic gravity position. So by increasing this follow position value, now this is in the rigid body tags force tab, set that follow position to something greater. This will be different based on your scene and the size of your object and gravity and how fast it's going and everything. But let's try 10. And then now they're all of the rigid bodies are more closely aligned with the position of the particle onto which the rigid body is assigned. Now, what we need is for the rotation of that balloon to be affected by that collision, but we need that balloon to be a collider. So on the balloon object, not hot air balloon, but balloon, I'm going to add the collider tag, collider body tag. And then I'm going to let this play out until we get to a point at which a balloon is at the surface, or a couple of them, because it's never that first particle that is going to give you exactly the information you need. So let's see here. Yeah, and they've already sort of bounced off. So let's go forward a couple more frames. Oh man, I mean, it's, oh, you know what so what is going on? Well, if I go to the project settings, in the project settings dynamics, I can actually visualization like what's going on here. So now I can see all of the collision shapes and all the bounding boxes and everything that's happening here. Let's turn off connectors, contact points, bounding boxes. So we're just seeing the collision shapes. And we can see that like all of these essentially polygons are being created simply for the calculation of collision. And when that collision happens, it's going to affect the rotation more easily than the position of the rigid body. So let me actually turn that off. And let's see, I'd like to visualize this more easily. So I am going to go ahead and move this guy over here, and we're going to turn off all of that stuff. So we're really just focusing on the particles being emitted, and then the rigid bodies that are assigned to the particle colliding dynamically with a collision object. And that's exactly what we can see is happening. Now let me stop here, and now we can like zoom in, and we get a much more accurate, realistic collision, right? That we don't get just you know, without rigid bodies. So
that's amazing.
also,
thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
There's one other quick question. Is it possible to transform the position values of particles into vertices, and maybe vice versa? That's the vice versa was my own question.
Like, so you, okay, so part A is, can we get all of these particles as like a point?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
I suppose like we probably don't have time to like get into it, but if you could just give us like a verbal rundown of how you might approach that stuff, if it would take too long.
So look, the answer is going to depend on the goal and the need, like what type of object, how close to the camera, how fast, I mean, whatever. But it is totally doable. The answer is yes. Okay.
Okay.
How I'm going to do it is like, okay, well, what if I just took a, maybe a null will work. Like if I just take it, let's go to a new scene here, and I'll go simulate come on, man, particles emitter, and I'll put a, what is wrong with me? I'm trying to drag and drop from here onto here. Wow, that's a good idea though. Okay, anyway, so I'll call this null. And then let's see, sure, why not say show objects? Even though it's a null, there's actually nothing to see, but we can in a null choose like a shape, right? But this is just sort of a display shape. It's not really there. But the point is, okay, something's happening. This is cool. Now, what if we did a bake as alembic? So let me try bake as alembic here. And I've not saved the file, so I need to choose a location to save the alembic files. It has completed that. And if I turn off the emitter and hide it, then I have two alembic assets. One is, I guess, the null, and one is the emitter. So I think, yeah. So I think this is the actual null, and then this represents the emitter. But anyway, there's actually all these points now, and I can assign things to those points. Yeah, so it's on that one. So I could like using MoGraph, right? We can add a itty bitty platonic, maybe not that itty bitty. Oh, and I added it the wrong way. It needs to be a child. There you go. And then we can set this to cloning onto an object, and that object is this emitter from Alembic. And then that I would expect that to work, but I'm not actually seeing, oh, it's on surface. So it's distributing this platonic randomly on the surface of this object. I actually don't want that. I actually want it instead to distribute to the axis, I think. If that's not going to do it, then I'm going to say vertex. And that finally does it, yeah. So there's one way to get some point data out of the emitter. Now, what was the second part? I know we're like out of time, but it was how to get that point data to
Like, can you
become a
take,
particle.
yeah, can you take points and then turn them into particles? That feels like a bigger conversation. And that was my own personal thing. So we could,
You know, and
shelf
that
that
is
for next
exactly
week.
the type of thing I would use MoGraph for.
Okay. Well,
Yeah.
there you go.
It sounds like something that I would do inform over particular,
Woo.
right?
Ah.
So I would definitely do that with the cloner rather than this emitter for sure. I would not be working with this emitter. I would definitely use MoGraph.
Okay.
Now, if you have X particles or thinking particles or particular, then you have much better solutions to accomplish exactly that. Yeah.
And speaking of,
Speaking of, yeah, it's not happening next week where we're going to be taking a look at some X particle setups.
Yeah.
Chad, you're doing
Yeah.
that, right?
no, shoot.
No, that's Elly. Elly, that's
Yes, I think that's all me. Yeah, so my plan is I'm going to create like a bunch of different scenes. So I'm going to do 2 NX particles, which I was actually like chatting with Darrin today, like what would be something cool that we could show. So one's going to be something related to water, because when it comes to like liquids in Cinema 4D, it's kind of notoriously known to not be very good at it, if we're allowed to say that. So X particles is definitely what a lot of people will use to create like fluids and liquids and water. So that'd be something cool. And then maybe like Darrin was saying, maybe like snowfall, but having it like accumulate on like a distorted floor. So instead of it just sort of like coming down, we're going to have it kind of like build up, which might be a cool little effect. And then, yeah, I'm going to do a couple of scenes using thinking particles as well, and like field force and all that goodness, in case people don't have X particles, which I know not everyone does. So yeah, lots of stuff next week.
Or I might do a quick introduction with thinking particles, and then you can focus on the X particles. We're ironing out the kinks. So
yes. Yes.
We spoke about it.
Also, bonus points if someone can explain explosion effects and like the basics, like a 2-minute explosion effect intro. No, in X particles.
In X particles, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's all.
Yeah.
All
Do you know what I could do that? And then Darrin, you could render it in Redshift.
Alrighty.
Very
I'm
cool.
in. I'm in.
Well,
Darrin, I wanted to thank you so much for
You're
taking us
welcome.
through all that stuff with the emitter. Honestly,
Yeah,
there was a lot of information there, and it was really helpful, at least to me. And you did such a great job of explaining us and taking us through that like particle journey. So thank you so much for doing that.
Yes.
Yeah.
So look, if any of the viewers are like, "Wow, that's ridiculous. I don't even know." That's good. If you're in trouble now, that's good. Because you are going to learn by getting out of that, and you will, if you're into it. So.
And we got a bunch of thank yous here from Mark and Eric. They're excited for next week. So again, thanks so much, Darrin and Elly. That's awesome. I'm so excited to see what you guys have to show. And I already put down in the chats the YouTube link for the unlisted hands-on series. So you could check out this recording there tomorrow at some point. And I think that's all I have to talk about this week. Did you guys have anything else to add?
I do want to say that one of the greatest benefits of this particle system isn't that we use it as we would expect to, but rather to create some other type of effect in a material, for example, or in deforming something. And I'll try to get an example file for that for next week. So keep your eye on next week's folder for that. It might have the word ripple in the name of the file. It will have the word, it'll be a ripple shader with particles and
I love it.
some other stuff. So I didn't have time for that today. But Yeah. And anyway, thanks for asking me to join you guys. I've been wanting to do something with both of you, and I've been working with Elly, and it's just so great to be here
It's
with all of
magical.
you.
Fantastic.
This is awesome. No, it's so great to have you guys here, and we're so excited for next week. And thank you everyone for joining us
Sure.
and for all of the awesome compliments. It means so much. And we'll see you guys next Thursday. And for those of you looking for the exercise files for next week class, we'll be putting it up on Tuesday night at some point. And may I wish everyone, it's Happy Canada Day, so I'm just going to say it out there. Happy Canada Day. My time to go enjoy a barbecue. But everyone have a great day. And if you are about to embark on a long holiday weekend, have a great long holiday weekend.
Yeah, be safe.
Awesome. Thanks, everybody. See you next week.
Cheers,
Bye,
guys.
Everybody.
Bye, everybody.
Take care.